The previous basket is under review.
Welcome back to Stats by Will and Jim, the college basketball podcast that focuses on the numbers. We are proudly under the Basket Under Review umbrella, so please check out the site and the Discord. We think it is the very best college basketball community going on the internet. Only $10 a month gets you access to all kinds of written content from some of the best writers in the sport, all of whom love college basketball and don't think it has the worst postseason in the history of sports. I am Jim Root, your host. I'm joined by Will Warren. And Will, that is where I want to start. I want to just leave the floor open to you based on this Joel Klatt scorching fireball of a take that college basketball's postseason is a waste. Just dunk away, man. The trampoline is on the court. Go ahead and go through your dunking line.
Well, first, compliment sandwich here. I want to say something really quick on Joel Klatt. As somebody who's watched a lot of Big Ten football in my life, Klatt is actually a very good football analyst. He has saved the Fox broadcast for me the last couple of years as my beloved Gus Johnson is in serious decline. That does not qualify him to say shit on basketball. And seeing this come across the timeline, so normally when these takes happen, it's usually and it is really funny. I think it was Merriam-Webster or one of the others. What's the other big one?
Merriam-Webster's the dictionary of choice for me. That is my.
But yeah, I hope for everybody. There's another major one that had a word of the year, but one of them had rage bait as the word of the year, or rage, I guess. And I do normally when this type of rage bait comes across our plate, I've gotten better over the years trying to at letting it slide, not falling for it. It's what is the meme? That's clearly a hot take. You've got a fetish for that. I'm not falling for it. That's kind of like how I feel when I see this. But combined with this bizarre push by, let's just say it, ESPN employed personalities and people who have reasons monetarily to speak on behalf of the SEC and Big Ten and power conferences, coming out so strongly against schools like Tulane and James Madison playing in the college football playoff. It's sickening to me that people would look at that and not think that that is a beautiful thing, that those schools are allowed to compete for the national title. You and I grew up of a certain era, and as time goes on, I'm kind of starting to prefer it almost, of the BCS, where teams like TCU and Boise State were really fucking good. And pardon my language, but like those teams never got the chance. And it was a huge deal when Cincinnati made it a few years ago into the 4 team. And of course, they lost to a far better Alabama team. No shocker. And people use that as the excuse, like, oh, that's why they should never be invited. It's insane to me to apply that logic to the NCAA tournament, which has given us stories like George Mason, VCU, St. Peter's. St. Peter's would have been relegated to the fucking Boca Raton Bowl if it was college football, and we never would have heard from them again. I don't want to hear anything from rage bait Joel Klatt again on basketball. This is the rare non-political take that completely alters my worldview of a person, and irreversibly so. It's not going to affect his employment. It's not going to affect anything meaningful to his life, but it affects for me how I view that person going forward, and I don't view them as a serious person.
Yeah, it's funny you say like a take that is so bad that you're like, I can't even deal with that person anymore. And hey, maybe Michigan State fans think that about me after I ranked Ben McCollum ahead of Tom Izzo this offseason.
I thought it was Matt who had
no, I think Matt and I both did that. So we're both, egg on our heads with that. But I remember one of the Ringers football writers, I can't remember if it was Danny Kelly or somebody else, but ranked Andy Dalton ahead of Aaron Rodgers in an offseason QB rankings. And I was like, I will never forget that. I will never forget you going so far to make that take when it's clearly incorrect. And, this one, as you mentioned, is done almost exclusively for clicks and for attention. And, I saw like some of the commenters on it talking about like, well, we don't want people in the field that have a 0% chance of winning. And it's like for years, 16 seeds had a 0% chance of winning. Until they didn't, and they beat Virginia and they beat Purdue, and they didn't go on to win the NCAA tournament. They didn't go on to win the whole thing. but they gave a moment that was super memorable and will always be a part of NCAA tournament lore. And just because James Madison or Tulane hasn't toppled the 5 seed or the 6 seed in the college football playoff yet, doesn't mean that it will never happen and never create a moment that's worth having in the history of college football. So it's just kind of reject that logic, even crossing over sports. And I don't know why it has to be like a drive-by for college basketball for people to rail against the current format of college football playoff. But I love that they're in. I'm with you. I couldn't even bother to tweet about this when I saw it. It's like, well, enough people are dunking on this already. And at least I have another platform that we can discuss it in more depth than just a tweet. But yeah, it's frustrating, and I don't know why people assign such like responsibility to the NCAA tournament when it's almost universally beloved, except by
It's the
people who,
one postseason format in America people like.
yeah.
People bitch and moan about the NFL still.
And I believe he said as part of it, like, it's not fair. And I guess I'm confused about what's not fair about if you win the whole thing. And
It makes me, I can't believe I'm mad about this right now. I thought I wouldn't be, but we're looking at it as like, oh, it produces a random champion. No, it doesn't. 7 of the last 8 champs have been a 1 seed.
yeah, a
What's
good
random
team,
about that?
yeah, a good team pretty much always wins. I think so. I think there's
A
18 of the last
more random
25.
team won the college football playoff last year,
Yeah,
the 8th seed. And I'm aware that, like, by the metrics, they were the best or whatever.
yeah,
But,
seeding
like,
was weird. But
yeah, yeah, and all that. But, like, come on. But we got to get serious here.
yeah, we're going to get serious about college hoops right now for anybody tuning
It's
in
not
for the
even like
first time.
one last thing, man. It's not even among the like 5 or 10 worst college sports formats. College hockey. If people are gonna find a college sport to complain about the postseason about, go check out college hockey. You get 16 teams in there, and it's single elimination. And you and I both know how random hockey can be.
Yeah.
It would be like if the MLB playoffs were one game.
When it's a low scoring sport, there's more randomness inherently, and that's
Just gonna
basketball kind
drink
of
my
makes
protein
sense.
shake.
Yeah.
No ad here. Just drinking my protein shake. Enjoy right now.
All right, let's let Will calm down a little bit. I'm sorry I got him fired up, folks. We were
I hope
recording
there's no
early on
lead
a
in this, by the
Tuesday.
way.
Yeah, I'm sure there is. There's lead in everything. Whatever. Okay.
There's lead in Joel Klatt's drink.
We're going to calm it down a little bit here with our stat of the day. We always do one trivia question for Will, and then we have a little ad, a little intro, and then we get into our 7 stat rotation where we go back and forth and talk about numbers that stood out to us from the week that was. Well, let's get to that stat of the day, Will. And this one I didn't want to go too in depth here, but I wanted to also unpack something else. The question I have for you is, which conference currently has the most teams ranked in the AP poll, and how many does that conference have?
Okay, well, it's not the Big East. Sorry.
That is correct.
I'm gonna say it's probably not the SEC, just based on like, because I mean, I've seen the stats. SEC versus Power Five is not as great this year. I am going to wager it's the Big 12 with 6 teams.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him. It is the SEC, which is
Oh!
why I wanted to ask, because it surprised me. They have 0 teams in the top 12, but they have 7 in the top 25. So Vandy 13, Arkansas 14, Alabama 16, Tennessee 20, Auburn 21, Florida 23, and Georgia 25. Now contextualize this. KenPom has no SEC teams in the top 10, but also has 7 in the top 25. So this is sort of in line with some of the metrics and predictives. It does have Kentucky instead of Auburn. KenPom's algorithm does. No Bad Teams is doing a lot of work for the SEC overall in terms of being the number 1 ranked conference per KenPom. Nobody outside the top 100. But Will, I want to ask if you feel like this is some sort of inertia to preseason expectations and SEC being unbelievable last season. Are some of these teams getting a little more benefit of the doubt? You know, Florida being ranked, they have 4 losses. Georgia being ranked ahead of other 1-loss teams from different conferences that maybe could be in there. Where do you stand on this? Does it matter? And should I have just not even bothered bringing up the AP poll?
I'm always anti-AP poll. I'm a big
Okay,
AP
good. Yes.
hater. But So the strange thing to me, there are probably a couple of teams that shouldn't be ranked. Like I'm going to be honest, Tennessee probably doesn't have one of the 25 best resumes right now. I would be okay with them dropping out. I know they have this really long pull streak, and selfishly like to keep that up, but they don't have a top 25 resume. I mean, honestly, LSU might. Like, I know LSU hasn't beaten any good teams, but 9-1 is 9-1. I do think there's a little bit of a residual effect here where, indeed, there's no SEC team that I would even say has a top 10 resume, not even Vandy. Because I know Vandy's beaten St. Mary's, but beyond that, there's a dearth of good wins, I would say.
11th in wins above bubble, the highest SEC team per that.
Yeah, and just by pure WAB, I think only 4 or 5 SEC teams are top 25. So I would agree. I think there's a little bit of residual effects here, and I'm thinking back to the preseason poll. There were 7 or 8 SEC teams in it. So we know that voters are slow to change. There's a guy this week, and I'm not going to name names, who left Michigan 5th for some reason, which is, I think, 2 or 3 spots lower than anybody else. And he was just like, I didn't change any of my top 10. Sorry. So I think there's a little bit of inertia there. But the thing is, once conference play begins, it's a little bit of shuffling, just like checkers pieces back and forth. Because we've already seen all the non-conference data, and now it's just interconference battles. So I don't know. I kind of feel like this might last if it's lasted this long, especially we're recording on a Tuesday. If Tennessee beats Louisville tonight, they're obviously going to stay ranked. So,
yeah.
And I'm struggling to think of any other SEC team towards the bottom there may or may not have like a marquee-ish game coming up in the next few days.
Everybody stick around to the end of the podcast for Will telling you what will happen in the Louisville-Tennessee game. Willstradamus coming out for the end segment. I'm excited to have his Vols involved in the biggest game of the night here.
I don't know that I am. I am for you.
yeah, you are. Okay. So I kind of wanted to bring that up because it did surprise me a little bit. I think there's, not a rebellion against the SEC, but, last year it was so freaking good. And this year, not quite up to that level, but still with 7 teams in the back half of the top 25. I think that's a little bit telling too about the depth of the league. Definitely no like undefeated holy cow team. Even Vandy, despite being undefeated, I wouldn't put on the level of Arizona or Michigan right now, or even Duke. But it's, maybe a title contender emerges down the course of the season. I don't think people saw Florida as quite that level last year at this time. But then just through the SEC season, they picked up some huge wins. They won at Auburn, and suddenly there they were, a true title contender. All right, let's get into the meat and potatoes of our pod, where we go back and forth with 7 numbers each. Before we do, a quick shout to Home Field Apparel, the best place to get your college sports gear for the college hoop season. Home Field's got all kinds of unique logos, including great retro logos and some off-the-radar schools. Make sure to punch in promo code BURNER15 for 15% off your first purchase. That's homefieldapparel.com. Got joggers, hats, t-shirts, jackets, anything you can imagine. It's all mega comfortable. It's all really cool and stands out. You've seen people on like TV starting to get into Home Field Apparel. They know how good the gear is. So why not join them? Why not buy gifts for some of your family members using promo code BURNER15? You get 15% off. Homefieldapparel.com. Wear one for the team. All right, Will, you are typically our leadoff hitter here in our back and forth on numbers. I actually prepared 9 this week just in case we overlapped on teams. There's a couple I thought we might. So that's coming to the table prepared. But I'm going to let you go first here and see what directions you go in, and I'll try to avoid doubling up on teams.
Jesus, I prepared 7. We're down 8 at the first media timeout. My team
getting
their ass whooped. The first one here is 15 and 21. This is not like a shooting number or a record. This is the fact that Alabama blocked 15 shots, but lost by 21 points to Arizona. So I looked this up. I think his name is Dr. Leo Spaceman in our Discord. I don't know if that's a reference to something. It could be, couldn't be. I have no idea. But
I think it might be 30 Rock. Mr.
Okay.
Dr. Spaceman, it's pronounced for some reason.
I never... Okay. See, I never got into 30 Rock. I know I should.
Okay. Hey,
that's a very rewatchable show is what I'm told.
Yes.
But that is the second largest loss ever for a team who blocked 15 or more shots. Fourth on this list, I should note, UConn losing that 6 overtime game
Oh my
was
God.
so
So
that's
they
the
needed,
fourth largest margin.
yeah, they needed almost 2 full games to get 15 blocks there.
Yeah. So there's a couple of different ways I think you can go with this. Number one is that, obviously Arizona won a game by 21 points where they had 15 shots blocked. That's pretty nuts. We might never see that again, especially at this high level. The other game that was higher was, I think, Wagner in Northern Illinois about 10 or 15 years ago. So mid-major games have some really wonky stats involved, and that just happened to be the one. But I kind of wonder which way you go in this. Do you go that you're more impressed by Arizona still winning by 21 despite this, or spin zone here? If this game was played 9 more times, does Arizona come close to winning by that margin? And should Alabama be at least somewhat okay with how this game transpired?
I tilt towards I'm just more impressed with Arizona
Mhm.
and a little bit alarmed for Bama. I mean,
The
Arizona had 20.
rebounding is very alarming, I will
That's
say.
exactly what I was going to say. Arizona had 22 offensive rebounds. Alabama had 3. And, maybe, you could say part of that's like the shooting distribution or whatever, but even 52 to 32 in rebounding, that is very telling. And despite a lot of these shots getting blocked, I think Arizona got the ball back on many of them and was able to put it back. Arizona actually took 26 threes, which, as we talked about on the pod last week, they're bottom 5 in the country in 3-point attempt rate. They're able to knock some down, but they also took 58 twos, and they
Mhm.
were just completely dominant in shot volume. They took more twos than Alabama took field goals. Like, that is a problem when you also take 26 threes. And it's just what if you're able to completely own shot volume that way, that's something Nate Oates is probably alarmed by because he understands the math of basketball. And Arizona, I just think the physical dominance that they have, and were able to show from day one of the season against Florida's incredible returning front court, it creates such a high floor, especially in a high possession game where they can play out that advantage in size and strength and physicality. And of course, as mentioned in our Discord too, they now have Toby Awaka, who is leading the country in both offensive and defensive rebounding rate. Will that just represents what Arizona is right now?
Yeah, I mean, I still am a believer in Alabama long term. I think they'll be okay. It was a little shocking to see them lose what is functionally a home game. I know it's in Birmingham, but that's, I believe, not even an hour from Tuscaloosa. So I I am really alarmed that Tobe Awaka had more rebounds than the entirety of Alabama's front court, 15 to 13.
Yikes!
Taylor Bull Bowen, man, I know he's more of a perimeter option, but like at some point you got to get down on the paint and do your job. Like 4 rebounds is pathetic. Uh, Noah Williamson is looking more and more like a major miss by Nate Oates. I didn't really understand it at the time, and now it's December 16th, and I understand it less. So I'm
Yes,
not really sure what the plan is or was there. This is an Alabama team that still, like I mentioned, I still think they'll be okay. And they shot quite well in this game when they did get shots off. But to get blown out like this in shot volume really isn't a standard Oats thing to have happen, and really hammers in just how good this Arizona team is and how deep they are. I know that we don't think of them as traditionally deep because it's an 8-man rotation, but the levels of performance they can bring on both ends of the court, they can just kind of rotate guys in and out through that 8-man rotation, and there's very little drop off, it seems.
yeah. They're also, I would say, and this is probably like not what Arizona fans want to hear, but they're benefiting from when your 8-man rotation is all healthy. It looks really
Mhm.
good, and another team like Texas Tech in the Big 12 is wishing they had that same kind of health. But yeah, Arizona, I don't think it's like inevitable they win the national title or anything, but they're just such a high floor team on a night to night basis, and the ceiling's there too. If they're able to knock down shots the way they were against Alabama, they can be good enough to win a national title, and that's obvious at this point.
Mm.
That kind of ties in, Will, to my first number. So I'm going to transition right to it. And the number is 5. And that is, to me, the number of teams you need to have for the implied probability of having the champion to be greater than the field. And this is
Mm.
inspired by Ion College Basketball was saying and discussing whether it is Michigan and Arizona versus the field at this point. And based on what their odds stand in the betting markets, the probability of those two winning the title is still less than 1/3. It's less than 33%. You need to add in UConn, Iowa State, and then a fifth, either Duke or Gonzaga, whoever you want. But to get it up over 50%, you'd actually need over 5 teams based on implied probability. Where do you stand on that kind of an idea? Implied probability is only one way to measure it in terms of whether it is 2 or 3 teams against the field. But just generally, how separated do you view those top teams? At least Michigan was actually down at halftime this weekend. I know they won by 18 again, but are those teams just so head and shoulders above teams 7 through 15 that we can't see an upset? Or where do you stand on the elites of college basketball?
I think that your eventual champion comes from that 5. But by the same token, I don't think they are that separated from the rest. They are a level ahead, but it's not like a full, I would never consider taking the field versus them. Because, for instance, last year at this time at Torvik, Florida had a 4% chance of winning the national title. 2 years ago at this time, UConn had an 8% chance, which was still third best. But the point is, like, if you go, you can say like, oh, Michigan and Arizona are, clear of the field, and you might be right. But if you were like Michigan and Arizona versus the field, you're giving up Duke, you're giving up UConn, Iowa State. Look, man, I'm not giving up on Purdue. I'm sorry, can't do it.
No,
Not
shouldn't.
giving up on Gonzaga either, or Houston, for the record. There's just like, there's a lot of options, is what I think, and we do this every year. I feel like where teams look flawless-ish through the first 10 games, and we're like, nobody can beat that team. And then somebody beats that team. It's really friggin' hard to go undefeated in college basketball, and none of these teams will do it. Michigan could go undefeated for a while. They just don't really play, and they look impeccable right now. But there will be a game eventually where they get got, and we just gotta, when it happens, tip the cap. And when it does happen, what we're not gonna do is be like, this means the field is better. This means Michigan's back in the pack. No,
Yes.
it's one game. It's the same thing as when people are like, oh, if BYU plays the way they did against Clemson in the second half the rest of the season, nobody's beating them. Well, that's not happening.
Yep. Yep. Teams are up and down. It's way too inconsistent. These are young, not, I won't call them kids because they're not technically kids.
They're kids to
But
us.
yeah, they're kids to us.
We got
Right?
gray hair now.
Yeah, exactly. Unfortunately. But yeah, you mentioned like Michigan could stay undefeated for a while. Arizona doesn't play a top 40 team again until January 26th. They've got a relatively easy start to their Big 12 play, and they've got Bethune-Cookman and Abilene Christian and South Dakota State coming up. So there's a chance they're undefeated for a while too. But yeah, even as of today at Bart Torvik, Michigan plus Arizona is only sub 20% chance to win the title. Michigan's only 13% there. Their implied probability based on plus 400 in the betting market is 20%, which I think is overstating the chances they win. But yeah, there's still a lot of balance and a lot of teams that can still win it. So I wouldn't go all in on those top 2 teams quite yet. I think there's a lot of uh, competition to be sorted out, and we'll see if, I think Duke can get to that level, as you mentioned, like UConn, Gonzaga, Houston. I know Gonzaga lost by 1 million to Michigan. I don't think that makes them doomed for a potential rematch in the NCAA tournament. So I think we shouldn't completely write off or call this race for the national title over at this point.
Yeah, and a quick look at Torvik's history. Only 2 teams who were the favorite on December 16th of a given year ended up winning it. Villanova in 2017-18 and Baylor in the COVID season. So, like, obviously Michigan's the best team right now, but it's a 13% chance. There's an 87% chance it's somebody else.
Yep. Think about that, folks. That's a big chance at somebody
Marinate
else.
on that one for a minute.
All right, Will, back to you for your second stat of our rotation.
Minus 12. This is the foul gap in Nebraska's shocking buzzer beater road win over the Illini. This is the second highest ever for a road win by a team playing a ranked opponent, which is nuts to me. Usually, when you get minus 12 on the road, that's a death sentence. And it says a lot about a couple of things. One, that Nebraska shot extremely well. They did get a lot of really good looks from 2, and I thought they moved the ball very well. But 46% from 3 is 46%. Got to tip the cap there. That just happens sometimes. And, to overcome Illinois shooting 62% from two is pretty impressive to me. Illinois did miss a few free throws, but nothing astonishing. And the shot volume was relatively even. Nothing, it was a slight lead to Illinois, but nothing major. So I want to ask two things here. This is similar to the first question. Does this say more about Nebraska's ability to overcome serious disadvantages on the road? Because we've kind of thought of them as a bit of a pinnacle merchant before, a little bit of a pinnacle bank specialty, which they still have. Or does this still say more about Illinois? We think they're quite good, but are they ready to take that next step and power down at home when they need to?
Yeah, to me, it's both of these teams are pretty low foul rate nationally, and it's just like they're both going to be in some higher variance games because they're like essentially shooting contests. Like that is
Yes.
boiling it down way too simply, but that's essentially how both of them want to play. And Nebraska wants to get a ton of threes up. They move the ball really well. They don't have like much of a downhill driving force. Like they don't have a guy that breaks down the defense and forces two to play one. It's a lot more dribble handoff stuff with Rink Mast. Actually, one of my alternate stats was Nebraska here, Will. I'm not going to include in my rotation, but yeah, they're 15th in 3-point attempt rate, 24th in assist rate. They are a treat to watch. They move the ball really well, but I do think they will have some games where they go 4 of 26 from 3 on the road. And it's like, oh man, they lost by 25. Nebraska isn't good. And people will make the sweeping conclusion that day that they are not good. But that's just the way they play. They're
Hmm.
not going to draw many fouls. They're not going to commit many fouls. Illinois is relatively similar in that way. And that's just going to lead to some higher variance outcomes. I thought this game would be Illinois sort of asserting themselves, and they did a little bit, winning the rebounding battle. Like you said, shooting 62% from two. But the great equalizer is the jump shot. And Nebraska, funny enough, I always talked about this with Creighton, their in-state rival, being the jump shooting Jays. And Fred Hoiberg has turned them into that. They force a ton of threes, like one of the 5 highest 3-point attempt rates defensively in the country. They just kind of think they'll probably outshoot you. And to this point this season, they really easily have done that.
Yeah, so against top 100 comp, which is 6 games this year, obviously 6-0, which is great. Opponents have taken almost 58% of their shots from deep against Nebraska, which so far this has been fine. Nebraska's run up a plus 9% 3-point delta in these games, so they've shot really well when it's mattered and opponents haven't. I look at both those Creighton and Wisconsin games as the supreme negative outliers for shooting. And Nebraska, to their credit, 64% from two. Do you remember them going 25 of 29 from two against Kansas State? That
Oh
was a
my
thing that
God. No, I don't. But Kansas State defense has some things to work out. We'll say that.
Yes. So I uh, I will say this: while I like this Nebraska team a lot, I think anybody with eyes should. They would be very high in a league pass ranking. The time to buy lows, well over. At this point, if you're buying in a Nebraska, you're buying the peak stock price. So if you want to
Yes,
buy back in and be like, "Oh, this team's a little underrated," that's over. Wait until let's say like January 13th or so.
that sounds far more reasonable. Yeah, after they have a couple of those cold shooting games, and they come back down to earth. I mean, they're 30-1 in national title odds right now, and I can't get there. I can't get
No,
there as much as I
no,
like that team and like watching them.
yeah.
I don't put them on the par or on the level with some of the other contenders around that level, which is like Alabama is in that neighborhood. I don't view Nebraska quite at that peak.
Hmm.
All right, well, back to you. Actually, no, I want to make one more quick comment on Nebraska, very, very quick.
Hmm.
Remember, like I guess it was 2 or 3 years ago, UCLA brought in 3 international guys and was like, "Oh, this is going to change their roster." Ade Mata, Berke Bjugtuchel, and Jan Vide. And I know Vide's on Loyola Marymount, and people probably have forgotten about him, but he's been incredible for them this year when healthy. Obviously,
Hmm.
Mata is a monster for the best team in the country right now. And Berke has been a very crucial piece to an undefeated team as well. So shout out to that international class for finally really making a major, major impact on the sport.
Shout
Okay,
out to
now
Mick
here.
Cronin, great scouting eye.
Yeah,
Could have been a little
exactly.
nicer to those guys. I'm gonna say
Yes, maybe giving them a little more leash early in their careers. Yes. Okay, well, back to you for your third stat.
50-50. This is the combined number of ties and lead changes in the game of the year. Providence Butler. Did anybody see that coming as your game of the year?
Not at
Um,
all.
yeah, it really did. I mean, kind of a buzzer beater ish win, I would say, for Butler in a way. The one of those stranger lead taking threes I think I've ever seen. Off the scramble underneath the basket, where I think Butler probably got away with a foul, but also if you're Providence, don't give up multiple leads in this game. But this is the strange and unusual game where I still feel fine about both the loser and the winner. I actually was quite encouraged by Providence in this game. Had a major foul deficit, -12 on the road, which is the same as Nebraska, as we talked about earlier. Still almost won in double overtime. Uh, did struggle on the boards, but has figured out their turnover issue a good bit. And Butler, like I know that Butler still had a monster day offensively. You know, it wasn't like a huge shooting day, like 53% from two, considering how bad Providence has been defensively, is not the worst event in the world. But the main thing for me, just like haymaker after haymaker in this game. Jalen Sellers, 26. Jason Edwards off the bench for some reason, 32. I don't know what that's about. Finley Bizjack, that name's never going to be normal to me, 26. Michael Ajayi, 28. There were 12 players, 12 in this game who scored in double figures. This is unlikely to be topped for 2025-26, and I am really looking forward, honestly, and I can't believe I'm saying this about two Big East teams, as we'll get to see what both of these teams do the rest of the way. Providence might have the secret sauce this year for being a league pass team. I don't know that they're very good, but they are very entertaining.
Yeah, they play up tempo now with the offseason assistant coach hire that they made to speed things up. And you kind of stole right what I was going to say. The 12 guys in double figures, 4 guys with more than 25 points. Uh, you're talking it as game of the year. Well, there are facts to back that up. KenPom rates it as the #1 excitement game in 2026 and the #1 tension game. And you just look at the game script. There's no stops in the final 6 minutes of regulation, and in neither overtime, each team combined for or both teams combined for 5 total stops. It's just made shot, scoring opportunity. Yes, some of them are at the free throw line, but that's what you want in a game, is teams exchanging great offensive play, and that's what this was. So I'm glad you highlighted this one, because 113 to 110 in double overtime tells the story of a great game, and it was, even under the surface, under the hood. Fantastic game at Hinkle, another excellent venue too to watch a game. So you have that going for it as well.
Yeah, and this is a good example of I always see fans panic tweet after the first few minutes of a game. Providence didn't score for the first 3 minutes of this, by the way, and still had 110 points, which is kind of incredible. So let a game breathe for a bit, because if you had looked at this 5 minutes and you would be like, "Oh, this is boring."
Yeah, what
It
a
just
snooze
ended up being the
fest.
game of the year. So
Yeah, they had 89 in regulation. It wasn't like they stacked it up with crazy scoring in overtime, and it wasn't like fouling late in the game where it was playing the foul game that got the score. It was just incredibly efficient back and forth play by both teams. Maybe they each showed the gear necessary to knock off UConn once this year. If your offense can perform at this level, then perhaps maybe you can get the win over UConn, and that's going to be the holy grail in the Big East of trying to build your at-large resume. Can you beat UConn one time? It's gonna be atop your resume. All right, back to me for my third stat. I know we talked about them last week, but I feel like I wasn't sold, and so I'm going to talk about them again. 67%. That is what Georgia shot from 2 against Cincinnati, previously one of the best interior defenses in the country, with great shot blocking, great scheme with Wes Miller. And the Dogs are now #1 nationally in 2-point percentage offense. They passed Michigan. That really stands out to me. I know the schedule is still not very strong, but I'm starting to believe. I'm Morpheus, or I guess I'm Neo in the Matrix. Morpheus says he's beginning to believe. I guess I sort of believe in this Georgia team. If you're going to be this dominant in 2-point percentage, #1 on offense, number 11 on defense, which considering they don't have Newell, as I harped on last week, that really surprises me. But Cyril has been such a force around the bucket. They've got depth and size. Abson is a former mid-major conference defensive player of the year at Appalachian State. He's given them great shot blocking off the bench. And then they spread it out around those guys, like a 4-out scheme with Catchings as the big-time shooter at the 4 spot. Their guards have been able to get into the lane. If you can dominate the rim the way they have, I can't doubt you. So, and after my whole Russillo routine on them last week, Will, I was most impressed by the loss. Nope, no longer. I am most impressed by the win over Cincinnati, where they punked them physically and were able to control the rim against a team that kind of prides itself on doing that.
I like them. A couple of quick stats on them. One, last couple of years, the teams who have been top 20 in offensive efficiency on December 16th of a given season, 37 of those 40 ended up finishing top 30. So if you're top 20 right now, you got a really good chance of sustaining that. So I think this Georgia offense is legit. I'm not quite as sold on them defensively. Their defensive rebounding is worrying to me. And I just, one, opponents aren't going to shoot 63% from the line and 30% from 3 against them all year. 2, they have had some real defensive struggles against better teams. I'm not calling Cincinnati a better team at this point,
No.
but they are legitimate. I think they are. I don't know that I believe in them as top 25, but they are certainly a lot better than the 14th we gave them in the SEC preseason poll. Clearly quite a bit better than the dregs of the conference. We could see a little bit of a Mike White back-to-back NCAA tournament bid here, which, trivia time, last time that happened at Georgia. You said it last week.
Was it a Mark Fox team?
No, beyond Mark Fox.
Oh God, I don't even know who came before.
That's the biopic for Georgia basketball is Beyond Mark Fox.
Beyond Mark Fox. Okay, good. I'm sad
Jim
I can't even
Herrick.
remember what I said last week.
Jim Herrick, head coach, 2001 and 2002, the last time Georgia made back-to-back NCAA tournaments.
Man, yeah, it looks pretty likely right now. Obviously, they've got to get through the SEC, but they've got 3 more kind of lollipops at home here, and then an SEC schedule that is tolerable. You know, it's there's not like loaded with, as we said, national title contenders. A lot of winnable games at home, and I've said it. Coaches that can make great changes to their identity to positive results, I have to respect that. And White has hit the gas pedal far more than he ever did, even at Louisiana Tech, and it's had incredible results for him. So the humility to do that, to change, to embrace a new identity and not be stuck in your ways, I think is worth commending. So Georgia, wow, well done.
Quick Jim Herrick point for you. Number 1, if you're not of a certain age and aren't insane like us, Google Jim Herrick final exam. Number 2, I'd like to ask you a question from this final exam really quick. How many halves are in a college basketball game? A, 1, B, 2, C, 3, or D, 4?
Look, I'm going to go with B2, but not confident. That's a tough one.
Yeah, it is. It's B. So I think you would have scored 100% on the Jim Herrick final exam.
I'm proud of myself. What a day I had here in the classroom. All right. Okay, Georgia, that's my respect after maybe being skeptical last week. All right, Will, back to you for number 4 in your numbers.
37th. With all priors removed, this is the ranking for one Boise State at Mark Torvik. Now, people have forgotten about Boise State. If they remember them at all, you remember them for losing the opening night game to D2 Hawaii Pacific, which, for the record, not one of the better D2 teams, kind of middle of the pack there. Since then, what they've done is actually quite impressive. Couple of losses in Maui to USC, very close, and NC State a little less close. But they beat Butler on the road last weekend. And on Sunday, at a neutral site in Idaho, for reasons I can't really figure out, streamed only on the St. Mary's website, really 2007 style event to be having. They defeated St. Mary's 68-67. And we've had a little bit of discussion in our Discord about the St. Mary's resume, but what we haven't really talked about is that Boise State is actually pretty good. We'll qualify this 7-2 against D1 competition with a pair of wins over top 60 teams away from home. They are, as it stands, above water and wins above bubble, which is strange to say for a team we really didn't see that coming from after their opening game. They are running a little hot, I will say, plus 6% from 3 while being minus 3% from 2. but wins are wins. They've had a top 20 defense since the season began, which I, again, really didn't see coming after opening night. It seems that they've readjusted things less to be around Pearson Carmichael than I expected, and more around Javon Buchanan and Andrew Meadow, with Drew Fielder really taking a big step forward from the Georgetown transfer. I like this team a bit more than I anticipated. And right now, as it stands at Torvik, 86% chance of making the future NCAA tournament. I do believe that's inflated, I will note. I don't think it's that high. I think fair or not, they are going to be dinged for that Hawaii Pacific loss in the committee's eyes. But
I would
even
like
if
to
you
say
do
that
that,
that's fair. That's fair to get dinged for losing to a D2 team.
but here's my point on this. If we had played this on October 26th and it was called an exhibition, nobody would care.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's functionally an exhibition game. Now, when teams lose, and they do, to non D1 competition in an exhibition, it doesn't count, and we don't care if that team makes the tournament. We call it an exhibition. Nobody cared that Indiana beat Tennessee in an exhibition last year, save for Indiana fans who are coping. Um, sorry, uh, but like, I guess with Boise State, one, how much do you care that they're 8-3 and they've beaten two top 60 teams now? And two, are we ready to consider them as possibly the Mountain West favorite?
Man, I can't quite get there in Mountain West favorite, but this is so similar to Boise last year,
Mhm.
where they had a couple, like they lost to Boston College, and that was damaging. And it looked like after they didn't win many of their big Mountain West games early in the season, they weren't going to build an at-large caliber resume. But then they won 9 of their final 11. They picked up a couple key wins. They made the Mountain West tournament title game. And it was like, are they going to get in? And they narrowly missed it, did not make the NCAA tournament, but they have at least given themselves a chance. And yes, St. Mary's was without Mikey Lewis basically the entire game. He played 9 minutes, nowhere near himself, probably their best player. But the at Butler win has aged well after that Providence game. And yeah, there's nothing wrong with losing to USC and NC State on neutral floors at this point. So they have the foundation to make the NCAA tournament. I think should be knocked for Hawaii Pacific because everybody knew going in it was an official game. It wasn't an exhibition, so you can't take it lightly. But I like that this team has a clear identity, and it is that they are huge. They're pretty dominant around the glass, and the fact that they can be so physical at spots 2 through 5 makes them really hard to deal with. Uh, Dylan Andrews is a solid defender at point guard. I don't think Mick Cronin misses him much for his decision making, but when you've got big, like athletic dudes at the 2 and 3 with Buchanan and Carmichael and Keene that can exert their physicality and help you rank top 5 nationally in defensive rebound rate, I know what this team is, and I think on a night to night basis they do too, and that's going to make them right near the top of the Mountain West with San Diego State and Utah State.
I guess I'd consider Utah State the favorite for now, but yeah, I think you gotta have Boise in the mix, certainly.
Yeah, do I have to have Colorado State in the mix because they will never miss a jump shot? That also
We'll
is
touch on them
something
later.
worth considering. Okay, all right. There's a little teaser. I like it. Okay, we touched on Maui, Will, and that is a good transition to my fourth stat, and that is 19th. That is Arizona State's ranking in wins above bubble. Bobby Hurley's boys in his what was assumed the swan song in Tempe are surviving and dare I say even thriving a little bit. And this team is fun to watch. They've got incredible speed in the backcourt. Mo Odom is just a dynamic playmaker all over the court. Bryce Ford, Pig Johnson, Pig also just having a guy who goes by Pig is incredible. Masamba Diop has given them a real presence in the paint. And now they sit at 9-2, neutral win over Santa Clara, kind of neutral win over Oklahoma, neutral win over Texas, and the losses are to Gonzaga and USC. There's absolutely no shame in either of those things either. Maybe Bobby Hurley is going to sneak into the tournament and save his job and become the Brad Brownell of the West Coast, just completely unkillable cockroach in his gig. But I can't shame it because this is actually a fun team to watch that's getting very impressive results.
Yeah, I hate it because not a big Bobby Hurley guy at all. But as you said, this is pretty easily his most fun team he's ever constructed. Mo Odom is awesome. Masamba Diop, that dude rocks. That's a great find. For all the complaints one could have about Bobby Hurley, the guy does have a real knack at getting quality freshman to come play for him, even if it's just for a year. And this guy is the latest in a long line of those. I am really interested to see how they hold up to the rigors of Big 12 play. I think that the defense is honestly not what I expect from a Bobby Hurley team. Defensively, they're not sound at all. They give up a lot of shockingly easy drives down low. That being said, they locked down when they needed to. And yes, it does help my narrative that Bobby Hurley got kicked out of the game and Arizona State immediately went on like a 19-2 run without him. Um, that being said, they've got another opportunity tomorrow or today when you listen to this, playing UCLA on the road in a Pac-12 game. That they win that, they are in legitimate, like, you have an at-large resume ready to roll heading into Big 12 play, and you don't really need to make any edits to it or clear like qualifications. They don't have any bad losses. They arguably don't have a bad performance either, which is shocking. I like the Georgia State home win they played really poorly in, but that's about it. Every other game has been fine to good or good to great. Like, no shame in losing to Gonzaga by 12, none losing to on a neutral to USC. I think it's pretty fine. This is I can't believe they're fun.
Yeah, it's wild.
I'm shocked. Like, I didn't see this coming. And
He's
yeah.
he's leaned back into, I guess, like the 2017, 2018, let's just be guard you and have
Mhm.
like a pretty shaky offense. But, the Trey Holder, Shannon Evans teams, I remember really enjoying those guys just going off. And especially the first year of it, it was more fun than it was good. But then 18, they did sneak into the tournament as an 11 seed. That, probably seems like where they'll end up this year. That, their quality predictive metrics trail behind. They're still not even in the top 60 at KenPom, but they're winning games, and winning games matters. And as you mentioned, if they are able to get UCLA at Pauley, they're going to enter Big 12 play needing to go like 8-10, 9-9, and that's going to be enough to get them in the dance, which is really impressive considering where people viewed this team coming into the year. And it just kind of seemed like Hurley's on his way out. The recruiting was like mid-majors and international and even a D2 guy. It didn't seem like they put their best foot forward there, but it has come together in a way that has been surprising and enjoyable. So a hat tip to Bobby Hurley in that regard.
Mhm.
Okay, back to you, Will, number 5 in your stat rotation.
Speaking of at-large resumes, we should be talking about the 46. That is the points in the paint scored by St. Louis against San Francisco, the most by a non-Gonzaga or St. Mary's opponent in the Gerlufsen era.
Wow. Okay.
I don't think we're talking enough about St. Louis yet. They haven't played what I guess we would call a marquee opponent. They've played some good to solid teams, but nobody that would really strike your fancy as a ratings getter. Certainly they would play in the G5 tournament that college football people want, but
Yeah.
they own a win on a neutral court over Santa Clara. The one loss is to a Stanford team that I like and think will be okay in the ACC by 1 on a very lucky ending, let's say.
Yeah. The follow up 3 disaster heartbreak.
Yeah,
Just,
sorry,
of
John
course it had to happen. Yes.
But a win over San Fran in a game where I would say St. Louis didn't even play very well and still won by 10 over a good team. This is a team that, as it stands, is at Torvik is up to 39th. They're top 50 at KenPom. They are almost a full win above bubble as it stands. They're going to win their next 3, which are Bethune Cookman, New Hampshire, and a D2. So they're going to be 12-1 entering A10 play. They have more or less done their job to build an at-large resume. They are probably only going to be underdogs in 1 or 2 A10 games. Road VCU for sure, and then probably road George Mason to end the year. We need to be talking more, I think, about the St. Louis team that, if they held to the record, I mean, they could be 27-4 entering the A10 tournament. And to me, more than enough to get you in the field, I would say. So, and this is being done without Robbie Avila probably even being their best player.
Yeah, it's wild. McCautry has come such a long way as a sophomore. I'm glad you brought them up, Will, because they were one of my alternate stat teams where I was like, all right, if we overlap too much, I'm going to bring up St. Louis. So I'm glad we get to discuss them. I mean, they are 1 point away, as you mentioned, from being among the undefeateds and getting way more chatter right now. And it was not just 1 point. It was a fluke, missed free throw, tough offensive rebound, prayer from the corner that like tickled the rafters before it dropped down and sank St. Louis's hopes there. Benny Geeler from the corner. They've played a not great schedule, and I think that's what people hold against them. But I think they're the perfect example of the imbalance and issues in scheduling. Like they wanted to play better teams, and I don't think teams wanted to. They're like, well, we don't know if you're going to be that good, but we know you're coached by Josh Schertz and Robbie Avila is back. What's the incentive for any power conference team to play them? And they were supposed to get into a better field out in Palm Springs and ended up playing like the second bracket, and that hurt them. Obviously, you get Stanford and Santa Clara instead of like a top Power 5 team. But if they just win enough, then they're going to find their way into the NCAA tournament, and it's a ridiculously fun team. That's kind of the theme I guess we've had on this pod is teams that aren't just good but are also fun, and that is something to salute. And I hope we do get to see Schertz and Avila in the big dance.
27th with all priors removed at Torvik, for the record.
They're doing everything they can. They're beating good teams by a lot. All right, we'll schedule some WCC and some Mountain West and beat Grand Canyon by 14, beat San Francisco by 10, beat Santa Clara narrowly, took care of Loyola Marymount on the road. So they're doing everything they can against the teams that are in front of them. They just have to maintain it as they get through A10 play.
We are in a time crunch, but I will note that St. Louis has done a really good job of scheduling to the WAB era. Because now 3 years ago, I don't think that the schedule would have popped anybody, but right now, them being almost a full win above bubble will actually matter to the committee.
Yeah, I sure hope it does. And it comes down to, can you survive those road trips to Duquesne on a Tuesday night, Davidson on a Tuesday night? Those are the ones that are going to test them and determine whether they're going to actually make the NCAA tournament or just come up short.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that wasn't actually one of my numbers, so I will go with my next one here, Will, and it's not really a stat, and I hope I'm not swiping something from you because I saw you go back and forth with, gosh, I can't remember who it was on Twitter, maybe Christian Jockey-Gian, just about Florida. And 2 years ago, we had an SEC team that was 6-4 in mid-December with losses to number 3, number 11, number 19, and number 49. They had wins over number 38, number 55, and they were 10th in KenPom. This year, we have an SEC team that is 6-4 with losses to number 4, number 5, number 7, and number 56, wins over number 36 and number 66, and they're 13th in KenPom. The 2024 team was Alabama. This year's team and that team made the Final Four, and this year's team is Florida. And they're obviously not built anywhere near the same. Florida is more defensive based, whereas that Alabama team was a fireworks show on offense with Mark Sears. But the predictives indicate how good this team actually is. They've played some really strong efforts in close games against awesome teams. Like at this point, how good does sticking with Florida or with Arizona for 40 minutes right down to the wire look? Sticking with Duke and leading Duke with 20 seconds left on the road at Cameron Indoor, that looks great too. I don't buy that the shooting is actually this bad based on what Xavier Lee and Boogie Fland have been in their high school and college careers to this point. I'm a big buyer in Florida as the 6-4 team that's still probably going to end up like a very high seed because I think they're going to have a strong run through the SEC.
Man, am I happy you brought this up, because at Basket Review, the day this is published, you'll get the buy low and sell high all-stars of 2025-26.
Good.
One of my favorite articles to write every year. Florida is on the buy low all-stars. They're one of the headliners. As you mentioned, the shooting, 26.8% from three, not going to hold. I would be pretty surprised if this roster finishes the year below about 31. I think that's about the baseline, and that would lead to roughly a 3-point increase in offensive efficiency. That would mean a lot to them. They're still two-way dominant on the boards as we would expect. Still really good interior defense-wise. The turnover margin does worry me a lot. I don't like seeing them minus 3.6 per 100. I think some of that will be fixable offensively. I don't know that they can turn it up the heat defensively, especially with Lee and Fland as your backcourt. But offensively, I expect that to come down. And I'm so glad you brought up that Alabama team as an example, because that entire, and I'm pretty sure Ken had a Substack post about it, is a real pat on the back moment for him, as he should have done, of screenshots from people in like Christmas 2023-ish being like, there's a team in the SEC that's 8th at KenPom. I'm not even sure they're 8th in the SEC. And look how it turned out. We are nearing that with the Gators. The only problem is that nobody from the SEC has really stepped up to take the mantle. So if you went in our Discord now and you're like, Florida's still winning the SEC, everybody would be like, okay. There wouldn't really be like a lot of pushback on that.
Yeah.
You'd get a way more pushback if you're like Kentucky's winning the SEC. But Florida, great time to buy low on these guys. They're 17th at Torvik. I would bet some amount of money. I can't think of a line in the moment. Some amount of money they're going to finish north of 17th.
I would join you on that wager, and I feel pretty confident in it. And like a reminder for the SEC thing, their schedule is so favorable for potentially winning the league. With Kentucky's one of their 2-time opponents, but they get Arkansas, Auburn, and Alabama all only at home. That is really, really beneficial. Now they only get Vanderbilt on the road, but I still think it in general is very, very favorable. Tennessee, they get twice, I believe. Let me double check. No, Tennessee only once and at home. So yeah, they've got a really favorable home versus road splits, and I think that will matter eventually. Just to hammer home your point about their 3-point shooting, which I just don't think it's going to be this bad. Shot quality grades them as having 5% regression coming. So they would be 31% is what they have. The quality of shots they have gotten so far. They just haven't made many. And I think when that ticks up, the offensive efficiency will look a lot better.
We also have a lot of historical data that I can put in tomorrow in today's article, I guess, about the worst and best shooting teams of the first 2 months of the year are almost never the worst and best shooting teams of the final 3 months of the year. There's a lot of regression to the mean incoming.
Yep, I think they will benefit greatly from that, and it's a very analytically based, sound-minded staff. So I think they're probably like just keep shooting, shots will fall. All right, 2 more for each of us here. Will, what do you got?
Here's our sell high team. And I'm apologizing in advance because I think we actually have an article about Colorado State coming out the same day. So I apologize to somebody. It might be Lucas. I don't know. Plus 12.7%. This is Colorado State's 3-point percentage gap this year. Would you like to guess what the second highest is in the entire nation?
Is it even above 10? I'm going to say no, it's 9.6%.
Barely. It's 10.1%, which I believe belongs to Belmont. 12.7. The Rams have shot 45.4% from 3, 81% from the line. They've enjoyed opponents shooting 32.7% from 3 and 66% from the line. I don't want this to diminish the fact that they're really fun to watch, that it's great that they beat South Florida and Colorado, and that as it stands, they're up to 63rd at Torvik, 9th with all preseason priors removed on offense. That's good and grand. But as mentioned before, teams, I believe the stat was that only one team out of 20, when I looked into this last year, who had shot north of 43% in non-conference play, even managed to shoot above 40% in conference play the rest of the season. Some severe regression to the mean is coming there. They don't force turnovers. They're 350th in turnover percentage. Above water in rebounding and foul rate, which is good, but very poor interior defense. They're an incredible 239th defensive efficiency-wise with preseason priors removed. So that's my sell high stat. They're still a lot of fun to watch, don't get me wrong. And it actually is going to benefit their watchability in non-conference play when it's exposed that they can't defend. I strongly advise watching them play Utah State on Saturday, the 20th. That might be our A+ game of the weekend. I'm not sure. I need to check.
Ooh, okay.
I mean, it really could be.
I think it's a good slate.
Shit. Yeah, Kentucky St. John's is probably better. Well, no, it's not. That's the slop game. Yeah, fuck it. We're going with that as our game of the week.
All right.
But anyway, I love this Colorado State team, but it's similar to my whatever point from earlier, Nebraska. The time to buy low is long gone. If you're going to do anything, you think of this like a stock market type of deal. This is where you would sell. You want to sell at peak value.
To a man, every guy on this team is like 15% higher than their career 3-point shooting percentage. That's true of even like Josh Pasquarelli, I think is a phenomenal shooter. He was 40% last year at Marist. He's at 54.5% right now. Like he is 15% ahead. Kerry Booth, not a good shooter, has never been a good shooter. He's at 48% from 3. Chase Butler, 7 of 24 at Washington. Now he's 46% from 3. Kyle Jorgensen last year was 32.6. He's over 50% from three. Jevin Munoz, Florida Gulf Coast and Delaware State, never higher than 34%. He's 39%. I think there can be like a rising tide lifts all boats sort of thing, and they're clearly shooting very confidently and creating quality shots. But even shot quality would have them at 38% on the season rather than 45%, and that is a meaningful regression downwards. I don't know when they'll start missing shots, but I'm with you. I feel very confident this team is not going to shoot above. I'll say even for the end of the season, they won't even be above 41 by the time it's all said and done. So,
And even adding in regression, like they're still almost certainly going to be one of the 5 or so best teams in the Mountain West. But the like I said, the time to buy low is over. I think you're buying in now. You're buying in on a team that you think is going to shoot 45% from three for the whole season.
Yep, and they haven't played a lot of athleticism. Like even Colorado is not a overflowing Big 12 team with athleticism. South Florida is probably the most athletic team they've played, even including Virginia Tech. And they're not going to see a ton of it in the Mountain West, but I still think it'll come down as the competition ramps up and they see a little bit more of this, that level of play.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm glad we touched on Colorado State because like I said, I hinted at them earlier. My second to last stat is 40th, and that is what Tulsa is ranked in the net right now. They're the only American team in the top 70. They also probably have a little negative shooting regression coming. They're top 10 in both 3-point percentage and free throw percentage. But per shot quality, it's not that severe of expectation. You just look at like what the roster has become. Like Tylen Riley was a whatever role player for the number 172 KenPom team last year, and now he's a high usage star for arguably the best team in the American. Barnstable from St. Thomas has been fantastic. Green from Rhode Island. Popula, the JUCO transfer with a wonderful name, has been terrific. And then now they got Miles Rigsby back fully healthy. He gives them a real downhill foul drawing type of option to go with a lot of shooting. This team's really good, really fun. I don't think they're 40th, like where they are at the net, but if they're like around 70th, they're 74th at KenPom, I buy that. I think they could be that good and potentially win the American. Like I'm not sold on Memphis or South Florida at this point. So perhaps it's Eric Konkel's year.
It might be, and I'm really happy that he's had his breakout because I loved his work at Louisiana Tech. And when the hire happened, I was really excited about it. I thought he'd be a really good fit. And maybe it just takes some time for him to find his players and get things together. Tulsa has had a strange history basketball wise, I would say, where everybody knows him for Bill Self coaching there. But outside of that, it's really been kind of the desert for the last 20 plus years.
You've had a couple come on.
Frank Haith, Danny Manning. Forget Danny Manning. The Conference USA tournament run to get the Wake Forest job. There's a lot of dry periods, I would say, in the Tulsa history. So for Konkel to come in here, if he at least has a top 100 team this year, that's a clear success and a thing to build on. And I think they can definitely sustain that. I don't know that I'm ready to crown them in the American just yet. They have looked the best of any team. I am still really in on South Florida. I think South Florida's had some negative luck in non-conference play. I can't quit Memphis, even though I should. I feel like an idiot. And Wichita has actually looked pretty good. I know they lost at home to DePaul, which normally would be disqualifying for a team, but they're up 32 spots in KenPom from preseason projections. Really good shot volume. I don't know. I like Tulsa. This team offensively is quite fun to watch. They're entertaining. Defensively, they're more sound than usual. Still not great, but more sound, more competent. And the benefit for them in playing this American slate, so they do have a couple of testy games, but they don't play even a Tier B opponent until January 18th that's UAB on the road. And they only have 4 Tier B games total. They don't have a Tier A the rest of the way at KenPom. So schedule-wise, they're benefiting quite well. If they get Memphis only at home, they do have to play South Florida twice, but it's not that difficult. A run is possible here to me.
Yep. Yeah, it's staggering, and they've come up way up in the betting odds for people that monitor that. They're right up there with Memphis and South Florida now, and justifiably so, with as good as they've been. All right, well, we got about 10 more minutes. Sorry to the listeners, I have a hard out today, but let's get to our last numbers each here. I'll let you start it.
Yeah, Jim has to go do hot yoga.
I wish.
Seventh.
I wish that's what I was doing today.
Yeah, you're doing the Bill Simmons hot water and lemon right now.
Yeah, the cleanse.
3.4 is my final number. This is the current projected number of Big East teams in the future NCAA tournament field at Bart Torvik's site. So let's go with this. Let's do an official over/under of 3.5. This is teams from the Big East that make the 2026 NCAA tournament in 3 months. Do you go over or do you go under?
I'm gonna go with the numbers and take the under. 3.4 is less than 3.5. I'm not sure where it comes from. Quite honestly, it's probably got to be Butler, Villanova, Seton Hall. It's not going to be Creighton. It's not going to be Marquette. I'm very confident in that. I don't think Xavier gets there. I'm kind of a buyer of Seton Hall because I think the defense is sustainable and Holloway's really good at coaching that. Then it comes down to Butler and Villanova. So I will just go under because I don't think these teams are going to beat UConn. And I think St. John's is going to assert itself back up as like a power in that league. A little bit of a buy low to me is similar to Florida. And without getting wins over those top squads, I think the bubble teams are going to struggle to create the resume necessary to get in.
I'm going to go over just to have a flip-flop here.
Good.
I will say 4. I think they get 4 in. Obviously, UConn and St. John's are more or less locks. I know that nobody locks 10 games in, but we should just go and lock them in. I will say Seton Hall, and I'm going to go with a wild card. I don't know that it's going to be Villanova. I would lean yes on them, but we'll see. I don't know about Butler. My point is that like somebody has to win games in this conference, and it feels like this is the year where a team that we're not talking about ends up just randomly going 13-7 or 14-6 in the Big East because somebody has to win the games. I won't be shocked if it's Providence. I won't be shocked if it's Xavier, who appears to have turned a corner. I will be shocked if it's Creighton. Let me note that. But I'm going to say those top 3, UConn, St. John's, Seton Hall, and then I'm going to leave the pool open to a wild card 4th.
Okay. Yeah, you look back at 2024 when they got 3 teams, and it was Seton Hall that went 13-7. Very controversial exclusion from the NCAA tournament. St. John's was 11-9 in Big East, 21st in KenPom, and missed the NCAA tournament. So yeah, that's the tricky part. If the team that actually goes 13-7 is shockingly Creighton or even Providence, have either of those teams done anywhere near enough to build a non-conference resume? Like I don't know if Providence gets in going 13-7 because their best non-conference win is Penn State on a neutral court. That's not even a quad 2 win right now. So I think the Big East still needs a few dominoes to break right with the specific teams getting the right wins at the right times. And I'm just not sure I buy it right now that anybody's going to beat St. John's and especially UConn in that league.
But every year UConn loses a bizarre one on the road.
It's always the Seton Hall, and we're counting Seton Hall in.
Yeah, but so let's budget that one in, and then St. John's usually good for a couple goof ups.
Yeah,
usually good for because you have to think about this through the lens of we will get a instant classic Pitino presser this year.
Yep,
I just he's already. When.
I can't remember what the number you said for starting lineups on our preseason episode, bold takes, but he's already at 5. So yeah, moved Dylan Darling to the bench last game and tried something new. So I think he will find his way to double digits this year for sure. All right, my last number, I'm between 2, my little safety valve here. I'm going to go with 0, and that is the number of top 200 teams that Miami of Ohio has played. One of the last remaining undefeateds in the country. They are 10-0, and they've only moved up 8 spots in KenPom, which I think tells you what they're doing against who they're doing it against. They have played 2 non-D1s. They have, again, not played anybody in the top 200. Now they play at Wright State tonight, Tuesday, as we are recording. So people listening, if Miami, Ohio is still undefeated or if they actually were able to go on the road and win a game against a team that's in the top 150. But they've only got 1 top 100 game on the entire schedule. That is hosting Akron on January 3rd. They've got another non-D1 game right before Christmas. This schedule is sad, but it also makes me want to call out Fordham, who is somehow rated as a worse schedule per KenPom right now. So yes, they're undefeated, but having not played a top 200 team has me super skeptical of the Red Hawks.
You win the games in front of you, baby, and it's not at all because I had them in the season-long team draft. No, sir.
Okay.
I Their run is going to end at some point, but one of the predictions I did put out for the year was that they would make it to, I think I said January 3rd undefeated. So they've just got to win 4 more. They just got to win 4 more, baby.
It's at Wright State and at Bowling Green, our actual legitimate test. Bowling Green actually really good this year, so we'll see
Yeah.
if they can get there. I like
The Red
predictions,
Hawks. Travis Steele, great coach.
just
That would
not
be
at
funny
Xavier.
if there was like a. They'll be fine with Richard Pitino, but if there's like a Xavier movement of like, we never should have fired Travis Steele the way that
Oh.
Indiana has with Tom Crean.
I would love to see that. Yeah, he never made the NCAA tournament, Xavier, which was like unfathomable in 4 years at that program. All right, that is it for our numbers here. Will, we've got a little bit of time for Willstradamus, our segment where Will tells you what happens in games that for you, the listener, have already happened. The big one is Louisville at Tennessee, but maybe you've got a hunch on Butler at UConn or South Carolina at Clemson, or even UC San Diego at Loyola Marymount. Will, tell us what happened. Give the details so that we can make you look like a genius with videos afterwards.
Classic Tennessee style win tonight at home in a gotta have it spot at TBA. I'm gonna go Tennessee 77, Louisville 70. Sounds low scoring, but this is it's a spot of spots, I would say. Home underdog, the whole shebang.
Had 10 days off. Yeah,
10 days off.
Yeah.
Working out the rotation, all of that. I'm going to say Miami of Ohio stays undefeated, 74-71 at Wright State.
Oh.
I'm riding the wave, baby. Going to a couple more that I'm looking at that I like here. I think Butler keeps it close. They're going to cover at UConn, but they'll lose by 11.
Okay.
So they'll follow up the overtime win okay, but they'll run out of gas. And then I don't believe, unfortunately for them, that this is the get right spot for one Florida State who's lost 4 in a row. I think this is a 20-point Dayton win at home.
Yeah, Florida
Are you
State
writing
against...
these down? What are you doing?
Yeah, so I can make money, Will. Why would I not write them down? Predicting exact score margins? Yeah, that's gonna make me quite a bit of change. No, yeah, Florida State against any athleticism size has been disastrous so far, and Dayton actually has some with Mr. Latang, who we've discussed on this podcast. All right, there you have it, folks. That is Will telling you what happened last night. Don't even go look at the box scores as you're listening. Just know that was the exact outcomes. That is it for us this week. I'm sorry I've got to run, but I think we got through quite a bit here. Got to talk about some teams who have had big weeks and some teams who might be regressing a little bit in the future. We'll be back again next week, right before Christmas. Maybe some sort of holiday theme with our numbers. I don't know. We'll figure it out behind the scenes, and we'll be back and let you folks know. But thank you for tuning in. Thank you to Trilly Donovan, our basket under review overlord. Thank you to Corey Aldis, our editor, Sam Freyer for our graphics, and to Homefield for sponsoring the show. We'll see you again next week, and enjoy the basketball.